Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a dusty road, your hands trembling, your chest so tight you can barely breathe. Your father, the man who raised you, who taught you everything you know about the world, is lying on the ground in front of you, dead, murdered. And the man who did it? He's still out there, walking free, breathing the same air your father no longer can. Now tell me, what would you do? Most of us would say the same thing. We'd want justice. We'd want revenge. We'd want to make that person feel every ounce of pain they caused. And honestly, no one would blame us for feeling that way. That impulse, that burning, blinding rage, is one of the most human things in the world. But over 2,500 years ago, a young man stood at that exact crossroads. He had a sword strapped to his side, a fire in his belly, and one single mission: to find the man who killed his father and end his life. He was certain that revenge was the only path forward, the only way to honor his father, the only way to quiet the screaming inside his heart. And then he met the Buddha. What the Buddha told him didn't just stop him in his tracks. It shattered everything he believed about justice, about anger, about what it truly means to be strong. And today, I want to share that story with you. Because whether you're holding on to anger towards someone who hurt you, carrying a grudge that's been weighing on your soul, or simply wondering how to let go of something that feels impossible to release, this story might change the way you see all of it. So stay with me. This one goes deep. Our story takes place in the ancient city of Savatthi, one of the great cities of India during the time of the Buddha. A place of merchants and monks, of people searching for meaning in a world that often felt cruel and unpredictable. Not so different from our own. In this city, there lived a young man. The texts don't give us a glamorous name for him. He wasn't royalty or a famous warrior. He was simply a son, a devoted, loving son whose entire world revolved around his father. His father was a good man, a trader perhaps, or a farmer, the kind of person who worked hard, treated people fairly, and came home every evening to share a meal with his family. He wasn't wealthy, but he was rich in the ways that mattered. And then one day, everything changed. The details vary depending on which version of the story you read. Some say it was a robbery gone wrong, others a dispute over land, but the result was the same. The father was killed, violently, senselessly. And the young man's world cracked open like a clay pot dropped on stone. Can you picture that moment? That instant when the person who made you feel safe in this world is suddenly, permanently gone. Grief like that doesn't arrive gently. It crashes into you. And in that first wave of unbearable pain, something else rises up. Something hot and sharp and ancient. Rage. The young man didn't weep for long. His sorrow quickly hardened into fury. He dried his tears, picked up his father's sword, and made a vow. He would find the man responsible and kill him. An eye for an eye, a life for a life. It was simple. It was clear. So he set out. He walked the dusty roads between villages, asking questions, following leads, sleeping under trees with the sword pressed against his chest like a promise. Every step was fueled by that burning purpose: revenge. He walked for days, maybe weeks. The anger didn't fade. It grew. It became his companion, his motivation, the only thing keeping him upright. He stopped eating properly. He stopped sleeping well. His eyes took on a hard, distant look, the look of someone who has given themselves over entirely to a single, consuming purpose. And it was somewhere along that road, dusty, tired, half-starved and burning with hatred, that he crossed paths with a group of monks walking in the opposite direction. And at the front of that group, radiating a calm so profound it seemed to slow the very air around him, was the Buddha. Now, the Buddha didn't go looking for this young man. He didn't send a messenger ahead. He was simply walking, present, aware, open to whatever the moment would bring. The young man almost walked right past. He was so consumed by his mission that the monks barely registered. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the expression on the Buddha's face, serene but not distant, warm but not sentimental. The kind of face that looks at you and somehow sees everything without a trace of judgment. The young man stopped. The Buddha looked at him. And in that single, silent moment, something cracked. Not his resolve, not yet, but something beneath it, some thin layer holding back a flood of grief he hadn't allowed himself to feel. "Where are you going, young man?" the Buddha asked. Not with suspicion, not with authority, just genuine, open curiosity. The way you'd ask a friend where they were headed on a long walk. And the young man, maybe because he was exhausted, maybe because something about the Buddha's presence made it impossible to lie, told the truth. "I'm going to find the man who killed my father," he said, his voice cracking at the edges. "And I'm going to kill him." He expected shock. He expected a lecture. But the Buddha did none of those things. He simply nodded, as if he understood, as if he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. The story of a human being in pain, reaching for the only solution they could see. And then, quietly, the Buddha sat down on the side of the road and gestured for the young man to sit beside him. And the young man, despite every fiber of his being screaming to keep walking, he sat down, and the Buddha began to speak. "Tell me," the Buddha said gently, "when you find this man and you kill him, what happens next?" The young man blinked. No one had asked him that. He'd been so focused on the act of revenge that he hadn't thought a single step beyond it. "Justice will be served," he said, but his voice was less certain now. "And if this man has a son, a brother, a wife who loved him the way you loved your father, what will they do when they find his body?" Silence. "They will come for you," the Buddha continued, his voice steady as a river. "They will pick up their own swords and make their own vows. And when they find you and take your life, will your children, if you ever live long enough to have them, simply accept it? Or will they too reach for the sword?" The young man's hands had started to tremble, not with rage this time, with recognition. The Buddha's voice softened. "This is the nature of hatred, my friend. It does not end where you think it will end. You light a fire, and that fire burns a house, and the embers carry on the wind and set ablaze another, and another, until entire villages are consumed. And every single person along that chain believed, just as you believe right now, that their anger was justified, that their violence was the one that would finally bring peace." He paused, letting the silence hold the weight of his words. "Hatred never ceases by hatred," he said. "In this world, by love alone does hatred cease. This is an eternal law." Those words, from the Dhammapada, verse 5, are among the most famous the Buddha ever spoke. And hearing them in context, in the dust and heat of a real human crisis, they hit differently. They're not a platitude on a poster. They're a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. But the young man wasn't convinced. Not yet. Because the idea that hatred only breeds more hatred, while powerful in the abstract, doesn't feel real when your father's blood is still on the ground. "So what am I supposed to do?" the young man asked, and there was an edge in his voice. Not anger exactly, but desperation. "Just let him get away with it. Just pretend it didn't happen. My father is dead. Someone killed him. How can I do nothing?" And this is where the Buddha said something that changed everything. "You believe," the Buddha said slowly, "that carrying this hatred is doing something, that it is active, that it is strong. But look at yourself, young man. Look at your hands." The young man looked down. His hands were shaking. His knuckles were white around the handle of the sword. His skin was dry and cracked from days on the road without proper food or rest. "You have not eaten. You have not slept. You have not smiled or laughed or taken a single breath that wasn't poisoned by rage. You say you carry this anger for your father's sake, but does it honor him to destroy yourself? Is this the life he would have wanted for his son?" The young man's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. "Holding on to anger," the Buddha continued, "is like grasping a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Every moment you carry this rage, it eats away at you, at your health, at your sleep, at the very heart your father spent a lifetime filling with love. The man who killed your father may be sleeping peacefully tonight, completely unaware that you exist. And here you are, starving, exhausted, trembling on a roadside, held hostage by a man who doesn't even know you're his prisoner." And that image landed like a blow to the chest, because it was true. He could feel it in his bones. He had become a prisoner, not of the killer, but of his own hatred. He had given every waking moment, every ounce of energy to a man who had already taken the most important person in his life. And now that man was taking him too, slowly, invisibly, from the inside out. Think about that for a moment. Really sit with it. Because this isn't just a story about a man on a road 2,500 years ago. This is about every single one of us who has ever held on to anger so tightly that we forgot we were the ones being crushed by it. How many nights have you lost, replaying an argument in your head? How much of your one precious life have you spent being angry at people who aren't even thinking about you? That's the burning coal. That's what the Buddha was pointing at. Not some abstract philosophical idea, but a real, felt truth that every human being knows deep down, but keeps forgetting. But the young man had one more objection, and it's the same objection most of us have when we hear this kind of teaching. "If I don't take revenge," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "then I am weak. I'm a coward. I'm the son who let his father's killer walk free." The Buddha was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the kind of authority that doesn't need volume. The authority of someone who has faced every darkness within himself and emerged on the other side. "You think it takes strength to pick up a sword?" he asked. "Any fool can do that. Any animal can lash out when it's wounded. A cornered dog bites. A frightened snake strikes. There is no courage in that, only instinct." He leaned forward slightly. "True strength, the kind that would make your father proud, is the ability to feel this much pain and choose not to pass it on. It is the ability to hold the sword in your hand and then set it down, not because you are weak, but because you understand that the chain of suffering must be broken somewhere, and you have chosen to be the place where it stops. The young man stared at the Buddha, and something shifted behind his eyes, the hardness dissolving, not into softness, but into clarity, the kind that comes when you've been staring at a puzzle for days, and suddenly the whole picture snaps into focus. He looked down at the sword in his hands, his constant companion, the physical embodiment of his vow. He had gripped it so tightly that the ridges of the handle had left marks on his palm. And slowly, not dramatically, not with a grand gesture, he opened his fingers, and he laid the sword down on the earth beside him. And then the tears came. Not the angry tears of the first days. These were the tears of release. The kind that come when you've been holding your breath for so long that you forgot what it felt like to breathe. And then suddenly your lungs fill with air and you realize you've been suffocating. He wept for his father, not with rage, but with love. Pure, uncomplicated, aching love. The kind that doesn't need revenge to validate it. The Buddha sat beside him in silence, present and unhurried, holding space for a heart that was cracking open and rearranging itself into something new. After a long while, the young man spoke again. His voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. "But what about justice?" he asked. "Does the man who killed my father just walk free? Does he face no consequence?" And the Buddha said something remarkable. He didn't say, "Forget about justice." He didn't say, "It doesn't matter." He said, "The consequences of his actions are already unfolding. They began the moment he raised his hand against your father. Every action carries its own result. This is the nature of karma. It is not your burden to be his judge, his jury, and his executioner. That weight was never yours to carry." This is a profoundly important distinction. The Buddha was not saying that harmful actions don't have consequences. He was not saying that we should be passive in the face of cruelty. He was saying something far more nuanced, that the universe has its own accounting system, and it doesn't need your rage to function. When you appoint yourself as the instrument of revenge, you take on a weight that no human being is designed to carry. You become judge, jury, executioner, and prisoner, all at once. The Buddha was inviting this young man to put down that impossible weight, not to ignore injustice, but to recognize that there is a difference between seeking justice through right action and destroying yourself through hatred. You can stand up against wrong without being consumed by rage. You can honor your father's memory, not by becoming a killer, but by living the kind of life that would make him smile. According to the traditional accounts, the young man did not simply walk away unchanged. Some versions say he asked to join the Sangha, the community of monks. Others say he returned home and devoted himself to living in a way that honored his father's memory through kindness rather than violence. Either way, the transformation was real. It happened because the Buddha met him exactly where he was, in the dust, in the pain, in the rage, and offered him something he didn't even know he was looking for. Not a lecture, not a judgment, just a different way of seeing. Now, you might be thinking, that's a beautiful story, but my life is complicated. The person who hurt me isn't some stranger on a road. They're my ex, my coworker, my parent. And the wound isn't ancient history. It's fresh. I hear you. And letting go of anger is one of the hardest things a human being can do. But here's what I want you to take away from this story. Forgiveness, in the Buddhist sense, is not about the other person. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's not about forgetting. It's about recognizing that your anger is a chain. and you are the one wearing it. The moment you begin to loosen that chain, you're not setting them free, you're setting yourself free. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice. Some days you'll feel that old fire flare up, and that's okay. The goal isn't to never feel anger. It's to stop letting anger live your life for you. It's to notice it, acknowledge it, and then gently ask yourself, is this burning coal still worth holding? 2,500 years ago, a young man put down his sword on the side of a dusty road. He didn't do it because he stopped loving his father. He did it because he realized that love and revenge are not the same thing, and that the truest way to honor someone you've lost is not to become lost yourself. If you're carrying something heavy right now, a grudge, a wound, a fire that won't stop burning, I hope this story stays with you, not as a command to forgive before you're ready, but as a quiet reminder that the sword is always optional, that there is another way, and that putting it down doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Thank you for watching. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to Mindful Buddha. We go deep into stories like this every week, bringing ancient wisdom into your modern life. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You deserve it.